Good evening. My name is Stormchild, and this is Eye of the Storm. The show will focus on a game called Hex Shards of Fate. It's an MMO TCG. The game is currently in closed beta and has a lot of features still yet to be implemented, but it's a very exciting game. And if you will, I'd like you to let me give you a few minutes about what the game is, who I am, and what my show is about. The game is an MMO TCG, massively multiplayer on, digital, trading card game. The MMO aspect is still being implemented. We have the Proving Grounds, in which individuals can combat one another in order to test their decks or just for fun. We have tournaments of various different kinds, which we'll get to later. So far, the highest amount of tournaments that we have is a cap of 128, which is pretty good. They're working on bigger ones, but we're still trying to get the bugs out on that. The trading card game is really the core of what makes the game Hex. The trading cards are digital, which allows this game to do things that other games in the real world, paper TCGs, just can't do, and take advantage of the digital space in ways that no one has ever thought of, to my knowledge. And it's really exciting. The game is really cool, and I really love it. The game started as a Kickstarter project about a year or so ago, and I stumbled upon that, and I looked at it. The guy who leads this project, he's kind of sort of the captain of the boat. His name is Corey Jones. He is the president of Cryptozoic, and by proxy, the president of Hex LLC, which is a sub-company, the part specifically designed just to make Shards of Fate. Is he? Yeah. So, really, really fun trailer. And as I go through the show, I'm going to throw out a few websites. I'm going to post them down below, and I encourage you to go check them out if they perk your interest. Specifically, go to hextcg.com. That is the main website for this game. And you're going to see, like in the first top left corner, is going to be called the Kickstarter video. Go check it out. If for no other reason, it's funny. Corey Jones does a really good job of making you want to listen to him because he's funny. And you like him so much, and you like his videos so much, that you go and you read about the Kickstarter, and you get a kind of an idea of what's going on, what this game is going to represent. You know, I talked about the massively multiplayer online part, the trading card game. That's kind of what the game is, but the game represents two different sides of the same coin. Player versus player, player versus environment. Now, again, we're still in closed beta, and since the Hex TCG is all about the trading cards, because that's the core function of the game, we have the PvP aspect and not the PvE aspect. The PvE is going to be a lot more complicated, and it requires that the PvP system be working flawlessly, preferably. We have set one. If you know anything about trading card games, they come in sets. I'm not super familiar with how this works, but I have been learning about it. Block system, and we have set one. We're actually going to be releasing set two. They're going to be releasing set two in August, so that's very exciting. And I just think this, I'm sorry, I just get excited about this game. I love this game. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am, and that'll probably explain why this game just clicks with me so well. So my name is Stormchild. That's the moniker that I go by. I've gone by for a lot of years. I was raised by a single mother. I lived with my mother, and we lived in a small little town. And by the time I was about six, I was inducted into the world of Dungeons and Dragons. It's a pen and paper game that you basically create a character through rulebook, and a dungeon master slash game master, depending on what kind of dungeon master for D&D, creates a world, and you attempt to create a character, and that character interacts with the world. The RPGs and video games and stuff, that's kind of the same idea. Role-playing comes from role-playing video games comes from this concept of the pen and paper role-playing games. And so it's a little unique inducted into that world when you're only about 6. I think it's cool. I like it. A little teaser. So I was really into fantasies. I read a lot of books when I was younger. I just have always been really into story and fantasy and these other worlds, and just I really find that to be my thing. I love that. And honestly, if you're on this show, you either stumbled here by accident or you're kind of into that fantasy video game kind of world too, right? Well, that's kind of what Hex Shards of Fate is going to eventually represent. So later on in life, I think I was about high school, I'd have to go actually look, this game came out that no one had ever seen before, and it was really interesting. So my mother, me, and my brother, we all jumped in on this game, and we started playing. And it was called Magic the Gathering. I'm sure you've heard of it. I honestly, I mean, you can say what you want, but I honestly see Magic the Gathering as sort of the forefather of the TCGs. I don't think that trading card games would be where they are right now if it hadn't existed. I could be wrong, that's my opinion, but that's what I believe. There is a little bit of a legal battle going on between Hex Shards of Fate and Magic the Gathering, which is currently run by, this is run by Wizards of the Coast. I'm not a lawyer, so I will leave that to other people. I personally think that Magic the Gathering has some right to feel the way they do, and I think that they see something that is going to revolutionize what they started, and something that they've allowed to kind of die off to a degree, or at least decay. And I think that they are upset, and that they're overstepping their bounds. And I don't know, because Wizards of the Coast is apparently now owned by Hasbro, so that gets all complicated. So anyway, that's my personal feelings. That aside, that's not what this show is about. We don't really care. That's for other people with higher pay grades than me to care about. Sorry, I have to avoid expletives because I want to be fairly friendly to some degree, which is difficult because I love expletives a fair amount. Anyway, okay, so so I was really into Magic the Gathering for a long time, and but like a lot of people, I didn't really see the value of it. I didn't see the long-term effects. I didn't really see where that game was going to go, and so I kind of just let it go by. And I don't regret that. I mean, that's fine. But I always wondered, you know, especially when they started having like the World Cups and all that kind of really just the level that that trading card game and other trading card games have been able to accomplish as well is just amazing to me. And I always kind of wondered in the back of my head, you know, I wonder if I could have done that. So I left that behind and I joined this other game. You probably never even heard of it. It's called Spellfire, and it was based off of D&D, which currently was not owned by Wizards of the Coast. It was owned by TSR. That's a whole other story. But the advantage for me for Spellfire was that Spellfire had a storyline I already knew. And that's something that Magic the Gathering didn't have for me. Now, Magic the Gathering has produced books and stuff, and I just never happened to get around to getting into it to see if I would like it. So the card games, the mechanics were great, but the story was sort of, I didn't know. So whatever. And Spellfire, you didn't have to read into the stories because I had already read like 20 of the different books before I even started playing the game, so that just worked out well for me. Again, it didn't really take off. That one specifically, as far as I know, didn't take off, and I left that one behind as well. And now, fast forward years later, I'm in college, actually nearer to the end of college, and I come upon a game called World of Warcraft TCG, the TCG, which is actually produced by, or was produced by Cryptozoic through a license with Blizzard. So this, again, kind of represents that same thing of like, you know, I played World of Warcraft for years, now they're coming out with this, so I kind of already know the story, and so every card kind of means something to me. Leroy Jenkins, I'm just saying. Um, so I thought, wow, and it's coming out on the ground floor. This is my chance to relive the possibility that Magic the Gathering could have been. The problem is that I'm older, and I'm going to college, I'm still doing my thing. I can't really travel a lot. And I don't really have the money. I can't just be blowing money left and right for this game. Not to mention the expenses of actually traveling to go see these things and get into these tournaments, and just trying to make this physical TCG something that I could do without it like corrupting my life and taking over was just too difficult. And so I quickly realized that I wasn't going to be able to stick up with the game. I wasn't going to be able to keep up. So I let it go. And then, obviously, about a year ago, I stumbled upon Hex Shards of Fate through actually the Angry Joe show. He had talked about, you know, go check out his, he had really liked the video that Corey did. So I went over there and I checked it out. It was really cool. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this is great. So the aspect that's really cool about this that you might miss is that it's digital. It comes to you. They want to be in esports. They want to be big. They want to be the biggest TCG ever. That's what they want to do. And I think they have a good shot at it because I've looked at the mechanics and I've been playing the game for like a while now. And I really like it. It's a really, really good game. And I think that they can do this. And I believe in them and I want to be a part of that. And the great thing is that to participate in most of the tournaments, to find out if I even have what it takes to be a champion, all I have to do is log in from my computer. So other than like shuffling the time to be at my computer, which they're doing a really good job of making different time zones friendly, because we have people in Australia, all across the globe. We have people from different places. I think Brazil, I think. I know we have a large French audience. We have a Russian, just everywhere. And that's awesome that we're already, we might be small, but we're already global. And so that's really cool for me. And being able to participate in tournaments when I can actually just you know, if I need to take a break, I can just walk away. I don't have to travel. I don't have to worry about, you know, lodging, food while I'm out there. It's all right here. All I have to do is shuffle it around my life. And that part is a lot easier when you don't have to actually travel. You just have to go home. And another cool thing that we're going to throw out there, you can already do this from a laptop. I've actually played during my lunch hour at work. They're going to have it tablet support so that you can play with your tablet. So a Wi-Fi connection and a decent mobile computer of some kind, and you can play this wherever you are. So you can even be traveling for business, and the game goes with you. The tournaments go with you, and that's awesome. So it really, that's really cool, and that's kind of what I want to know is can I do this? Can this be me? I might lose. I might be a complete failure, but at least I'll get to know, and I didn't have to spend thousands of dollars trying to travel around to do it. Obviously, if I get further along and I do have to travel to places, it might be worth it if I'm at that skill level. We'll see. So the PvP is what I came for, and that's a little bit different than a lot of the different Hex. A lot of them came for the PvE, especially a lot of our content producers. People who are doing podcasts and whatnot, shows like this one, a lot of them came for the PvE. That's what really excited them, and for me, it wasn't my draw. But you start to get into the story of Entrath and this Hex comet that strikes the world and just changes everything, and you start looking at the sort of the dichotomy between the storyline and the card game, and it's really fluid, it's really well connected, and it both laughs at itself but still maintains a serious thread that allows you to say, hey, this is a real story. In fact, they're actually producing a book. I believe the working title, it may even be the firm title, is called The Accidental Knight. Sounds interesting. We'll see. So when I fell in love with this story, and when I was trying to decide if I really wanted to try to produce content, I mean, does anybody really want to hear me talk? I know I'm actually kind of camera shy, which is why I'm stammering and having difficulty looking at the camera because I tend to wander. I wanted to figure out what I could do that would make this worthwhile. So here's what we're going to do with the show. I've already got a little over my intro time allotment because I want to try to keep this under an hour. What I want to do with this show is I want to talk about current events a little bit because I think that's useful. I want to talk about the different features that are in the game. I think that that's functional for a lot of people who don't know or aren't into the game yet. We're going to be doing, I'm going to be creating really silly thematic decks that just sort of kind of show different themes about the game, specifically because my primary focus, one of the two major things that I hope to be doing with this show is I want to talk about the lore. I want to talk about the lore. A lot of people are focused, even though that they're keen for the PvE, the content is PvP. What do you talk about? You talk about PvP. Makes perfect sense. I want to try to find a way to circumvent that barrier and still find a way to talk about the lore and be excited about the storyline that will eventually create the background and the premise for how the PvE comes out. What we're going to do when Set 2 comes out, when PvE comes out with this show, I don't know. I don't even know if I'll be here. That's going to be up to you. I mean, if you're not listening to me, who cares, right? So that's the goal, is the lore. I'm also going to try to do I'm going to be doing some what I call lore drafting. The goal is that I attempt to draft while doing this live, but I may actually just go ahead and record these and then overlay them because it's really hard to concentrate on both drafting and talking about the lore at the same time. But the idea is that I open a draft, I get a rare card. The rare card is whatever. Let's say it's a sapphire human, and then I'll talk about either sapphire, I'll talk about humans, maybe I'll talk about the Ardent, which is the alliance that they're in. Maybe I'll talk about the specific, like Cerealia. See, now I have to go look. I wasn't ready to say that. But one of the three human nations, talk about where we are, things like that, whatever it happens to be. All right, so I've already kind of violated the next set, which is to talk about the lore. So let's switch here. I'm going to, if I'm savvy enough, I'm going to press this button, and I will go down into the bottom right corner. Oh, there I am. And then I press this button, and hey, look, it's Hex Shards of Fate. Okay, so this is Entrath. You can see, I'll move it around for you. And we're not going to talk about the volcano yet, or the little thing that you can't see, but there's a moon. Oh, there it is. That's Hex. That right there is what struck this world. We'll talk about that here in just a second. I want to quickly go over Hex before, or well, Entrath. This is Entrath. And I want to go over Entrath before we talk about what happens when Hex hits. So, what we're going to be talking about is the fact that Entrath exists. Now, Entrath has what I'm gonna use two different defining words. These are my words, just to kind of make it to where we can communicate. Entrath has 7 predominant races. And what I mean by predominant is that these are the races that are large-scaled races covering a large area of the part of the world that we are in, and that they just have more presence than the other races. So, large-scale races. We have humans, orcs, elves, coyote, shinhair, dwarves, and the venom. Currently, there are only 7. There will be one more when Hex strikes. We'll get to that. So, of these 7 predominant races, the focus of the actual card game of set 1 is only a small portion. We're not really sure where it is. I heard that it was a peninsula, but maybe here. Or here. I don't know. Anyway, it's supposed to be just this small area of interest, so that as we get sets, we can go deeper and deeper into what's happening in the area that we're in, and we can expand to where we talk about different parts of the world, and we get bigger and bigger. I mean, they supposedly have like 5 years of content that they think they're going to be able to bring us before they start having to go further. And I don't know if that's including the fact that there are ways of getting off of Entrath and going into potentially other planes such as the Void Society. Again, we'll get to that a lot later. Probably not even this episode. Not even this episode. Okay, so you have these 7 predominant races, you have 4 dominant races. And what I mean by that is that of set 1, these are your focal points. These are the 4 races that you are seeing the most for whatever reason, and we'll theorycraft why that is. But you have the humans, the orcs, the Shin'hare, and the dwarves are the major focus of the 4. I mean, you only have so many cards. Set 1 is actually really huge. It's like 356 cards, somewhere around that, about 350. A lot of cards. And so, you know, next sets will be a lot smaller, probably 100 to maybe 150. I'm guessing. I'm not super familiar with how sets are usually released. I never really got that far in any of the games that I played. Funny, since I want to be the competitive one, right? So, so the 7 dominant races, 4 dominant races, and they're all in this little area. They're probably outside of this area as well, but this is the focus of the story that we're currently telling with set 1. So, Entrath actually already has its own magic. It has wild magic, which was believed to be created as a byproduct when the elves emerged from the Genesis pool, located in a place called Flower Forest. Now, the elves, while they embody wild magic isn't only theirs, so other races can also tap into that, and that happens to be the Shin'hare and the Coyote. Wild magic is essentially the will worker's ability to infuse their will into the natural world and create change. Things like propagation, growth, fertility, summon natural animals to them, control the weather, things like that. These are all the kinds of things that are generally associated with natural, wild magic. Now, the second form of magic that also exists in Entrath is almost as old as the world. And that's what it says. When you go to Hex TCG, go there. They will show you. There's plenty of places where you can read all about this. This will kind of minimize how much you have to read, kind of just go over it verbally for those of you who prefer to hear rather than to read. But, I mean, there's a lot of information there. They're constantly updating it. It's great. So you have blood magic. Blood magic is essentially the antithesis of wild magic. It's taking natural magic and corrupting it, making it dark and twisted and generally evil, honestly. That's kind of where they go with that. So blood magic is kind of all about like suffering, torment, sacrifice, pain, all those kinds of brutal violence, all that is what it likes to do. Anything that wild magic tends to stand for, while wild magic can kill you, obviously a hurricane can kill you, that's part of the natural world. But blood magic takes that natural magic and it corrupts it, and shifts it, and makes it kind of vile, dark, and twisted. So there are different races that are really into that. Specifically, the Venin, which it's the only magic that they use because they were created by Zentoth, the Blood Primal. And yeah, so, but we'll get into the Benin later. They're one of the lesser used races at the moment. Though hopefully that will change as we hit set 2. And they're talking about potentially a deep dive into the Benin in set 3. That's unconfirmed. Don't quote me. Hey, look at text. Okay, so you have these 2 different kinds of magic, right? And so this bad boy, this big, gigantic, crystalline comet. Now look how big that is. You can't really tell because, I mean, who knows how this is. And this is not going to be the final image. I can guarantee this is not the final image. I will tell you why. The story is Hex comes shooting out of nowhere and it slams into Entrath, right? Into one of its polar axes. And it hits, hey look, big hole, right? It hits and it creates a volcano on one side, shoots out the other side, creating another volcano. So there are 2 volcanoes on each side of this axis. And it pops out, and then the gravitational pull of Entrath actually prevents the crystal from being able to go away or escape its gravitational pull. So the reason I don't, now I could be wrong, but the reason I don't think that this is the right picture is because this looks like a bullet hole. This looks like what you would see if I shot something. This would be the front, and this is supposedly one of the exit wounds or entry wounds. So the problem is that that's like a 90-degree angle. It's obviously not down here. Now this actually could be something else and have absolutely nothing to do with Hex hitting, or it could be a side effect. Who knows? The other volcano might be down here somewhere that I can't get to because this thing doesn't spin all the way. So I'm not sure. But I don't think that this is the final version of it. It might be. I could be wrong. It's pretty cool, though. I like it. Anyway, so Hex is... So now, one of the big things that you have to realize is that Hex, this gigantic comet, slams into Entrath. Now, based on what I see, my first question is, how did this comet not destroy the world? I mean, we're talking that's like, I'm not huge into like world-ending comets, but as far as that goes, that looks like a world ender to me. If I just had to guess, I would say that would severely alter the world, which it does. I think part of that is coming from magic. And another part of that is coming from the fact that it's not exactly what it seems. So this comet hits, and I believe, I'm kind of piecing this together, that pieces of it shattered off of the top and just kind of showered out, hitting the world, and probably like all over the world. But as well as drilled through it, so a lot of pieces were left behind as it tunneled through it. And one of the places that it tunneled through is it was one of the... okay, so it has a bunch of different shard types. Sapphire, diamond, and ruby. And we don't know that the Hex... oh, that's cool. I can actually kind of see some of the colors. We don't know that there aren't other shard types that we just haven't found that are located on the comet itself. All we know is that these are the 3 shards that it left behind. So we guess that that's its only content. We do know they have all but confirmed that there will be other shard types. Not necessarily like another, like a 6th form of magic, so much as like basically a dual shard, where one shard represents 2 different types of shards. I don't know. Purple is blue and red, so that would be both ruby and sapphire, and then this purple gem of some kind, whatever a purple gem, I can't see the color purple, whatever a purple gem is, would be, amethyst? Is that right? I thought it was blue. It might be amethyst. Anyway, so you'll have a gem like that, and it will represent both, but that's going to be later. I don't even think that's going to be in set 2, honestly. Maybe set 3 if we're lucky. It would be nice. Okay, sorry, got distracted. Okay, so Entrath hits, does all this stuff. Now, one of the key things that happens is that this gigantic, literally mountain-sized diamond comes to rest next to a crypt that the humans have where they keep all their kings and fallen heroes. These are like the biggest people possible, like the, you know, presidents or whatever, and just like, you know, all the people that were the most glorious, most important to their kingdoms, the people that did the most good, honorable, held really large stations of power and title. These are the people that they buried in this like very honor oriented, like very holy location. And this diamond gem mountain somehow manages to infect one of the dead people. And so how the necrotic come about, and that's what these are, is the necrotic, is that, like, I'm not sure how the first one came about, but he gained sentience. And the way he gained sentience is that his eyes are replaced by diamond shards. In fact, click, not there, click like home. Meet Gazog, who, hey, they did fix it, good. So this is an example of a necrotic, and I'm going to listen to people talk right now. This is an example of a necrotic guy. He's got a sword, he's wearing armor, but you can see that instead of normal eyes like you or I, he has these diamond gems that are glowing, and that's one of the ways that you can tell they're necrotic. Always diamond. Not sure why yet. So it turns out that the hex gems actually have a sort of a sentience, but the diamond gems appear to be the only ones that actually can create the necrotic, or yeah, and this is how they procreate. And they're also that's how they procreate, is that they put these diamond gems in there. They're also only able to really influence creatures that are dead, and seem to specifically be humans so far. Now that might be because that's their major. I think actually there is a, I should have looked that up. There is a like a physiological disassociation with the hex shards being able to work with other races, because they only seem to work on humans. During the great wars that occur, they actually harvest the bodies. They actually have this neat card called Corrupt Harvester, and his job as one of the necrotic is to go around collecting the dead and creating new necrotic, and that's how they create them. Now, one of the things that's interesting about the necrotic is that, let's say, okay, Stormchild. Stormchild was a noble knight for whatever reason, and he got buried here, and he was cool and whatever, but he died somehow, and now he's buried in this crypt. They put the diamond gems into my skull, and now I'm necrotic. So Stormchild no longer exists. My body is merely a vessel that allows the necrotic, the consciousness of the necrotic, to move around. And they actually have like a hive intelligence, but they do have individuality, which is obvious because not only do they have names like Lixel and Gazog, and they have desires. They have desires that are not necessarily shared amongst them, but they have sort of a hive mind. So they're not like bees, where everybody kind of follows around the queen, but they do have an overall pending sort of drive. We don't know what it is yet. We hope to learn more. This has to do with the fact that the hex gems are sentient, and really that's what's happening. So when you think about that, the hex comet that struck this world, if the hex comet is sentient, did it strike the world on purpose? If the hex gems have enough power to exile people into the void, stop time, or light things on fire, is it possible that the comet purposely struck Entrath and actually made itself drill through it and lose pieces of itself, or actually give away pieces of itself, while putting this diamond mountain inside of, that just happened to luckily coincide with a large number of compatible hosts? See, this is great. This is all, we don't get to play the game yet, but we're already thinking like, dude, I want to go out and play a necrotic. I want to know how did I get created? If my champion Stormchild is a necrotic, how was I created? And what's my society like? You know, what's it like down there being part of the necrotic? So that's what we really want to explore with this. You know, man, I'm going over. Okay, so that's kind of the basic premise of how this all came to be, and that creates the necrotic. The necrotic and the humans kind of, you know, obviously the humans, for one, you're stealing the bodies of people we cared about, which is not okay with us. And then humans have always been kind of that like down with the undead, and the necrotic kind of seem like they're undead. They're not. I mean, they kind of are, but they're not. They like to think of themselves as awakened. They're not really undead. They're different, but by just like the purest form of definition, you could consider them undead, and so the humans don't like that. So they get into a big old fight. Well, this fight, the necrotic need to do something about it because the humans are cutting down their numbers and making their lives very difficult. And they weren't looking necessarily for a fight. We don't really know the motivation of the necrotic, so they decide, we're going to go get some allies, and we're going to hammer the humans. So that's when they create the underworld faction. They get the dwarves. I know, right? The dwarves. One of the things that I love about, a quick segue, one of the things I love about this game is that they take races that we know, and they do something unique with them. They take races that we know, and they put them on their heads. And then they give us races that we don't know. So the underworld is composed of the necrotic, which are kind of like undead, but not. They're composed of the venin, which is a spider-like orcs, which there is an example of something like that. They're very different. But the closest example of what a venin would be is like the drow, or not the drow, drider, which is a drow elf and a spider, but huge difference as to why they're created, but definitely maybe some sort of ode. I think somebody played Dungeons and Dragons in this game, in this development company. So you have the venin, you have the shin hair, which is just this unique version of rabbits, and then you have the dwarves. Wait, the dwarves? But they're the good guys. Well, not this time. These guys are some of the most sadistic sons of guns out there. They literally, like, everybody has their own kind of, like, ideal of what they want to do. Like, the venin want to make people suffer, and no one really knows what the necrotic do. And the shin hair want to oppress people, and the dwarves, they want to destroy the world. That's their end game. Genocide for everyone. So that's interesting. Okay, so then they get together, they form this faction, and the underworld incursion occurs, and the races on the surface are forced to band together and create the Arden Alliance. Again, you have humans, and I'll talk about where they actually managed to create a uniqueness to the humans that I found so interesting that despite the fact that I didn't think I would really want to play a human, because I'm already human. Why would I want to do that? I mean, I want to play it, but like I'm more interested in these other cool races. There actually is some cool stuff that's going on with the humans that I like and makes me more interested in them. They have the elves, which are their own little unique twist, but they're basically elves, so we'll learn more about them. The Coyote, their own little race, similar to kind of a Native American-esque culture. Tribal, definitely very tribal. And then they have the orcs. Again, flipping that on the head. The orcs really, they even surprised themselves joining this group. So we'll get into the different races later, but I can't express enough about how much I've fallen in love with this story. All right, so I've wasted a lot of time already going into my X part, so I'll have to make this next part a little bit quicker. I'm going to talk about some of the features in the game, and I want to give a shout out. I'm going to want to. Hi, Kitty. Once in a while, I'm going to want to do, or at least once an episode, I'm going to want to do a shout out or two about different people that are producing content that I think are useful for beginners, intermediates, whatever. My show is based on lore. It's not really about beginning, ending. It's kind of somewhere in the middle, I guess. I'm not a pro player, obviously. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. So some of the features of this game, obviously I've talked about how there's the player versus player. So you have the proving grounds that you can go to, and I can challenge any one of these people, any available player, they may or may not accept. I can play a random opponent. This is how you are, in theory, supposed to do it, but sometimes it takes a little while depending on if anyone else is using it and how many people are actually around. You can see who are playing and what they're doing. You can play the computer. The computer's AI is terrible. It's a placeholder, and it's just gotten worse as it's been neglected the whole time because their focus is on something else. It's a small company, so they only have so much resources they can dedicate to everything, and the player versus environment AI is supposed to be like a lot better. I won't even use a number, just a lot better. So you have this sort of the proving grounds that you go into, and then you can go into tournaments. And this is your multiplayer part. We're a small community right now, but we do hope to get bigger, and we have some different kinds of things that you can do. We have 3 basic types of tournaments. You have constructed, you have draft, and you have sealed. Ignore the hex staff. So a sealed event, I've actually participated in one with the World of Warcraft. And it took me a while to remember that this is what I did. But a sealed event is basically, I go to a table and I sit down around 7 other digital players. And I have 6 packs that I brought with me, that I already purchased, however I got them. And I put them down, and we each open our packs at the table. We start sorting through the cards. And my understanding, I haven't done this in a really long time. I've only ever done it once. I failed at that tournament. Pretty hardcore. And if I remember correctly, what you're supposed to do is you take these, I'm pretty sure it's 6 packs, and you take them, you build the best deck that you can. I believe it's a 60-card deck. I don't remember specifically for this game. But you create this 60-card deck, or the deck, and you play against everybody in the hopes to win rewards. That's how that play format works. You have the constructed cube. This is the most obvious one. This is the one I did the most in Magic the Gathering when it was a paper TCG. You build whatever the best deck is you can based on the confines of the rules, like 4 of a set. No more than, or you have to have at least 60 cards. Obviously, you have to have the shards, or otherwise you can't play anything. This is what I'm the most familiar with. It's what I came to do in the game. They're not firing a huge amount. Like, you can see that some people are trying to get competitive. Oh, that's draft, never mind. Okay, I guess not. I thought earlier there was. So that they are trying to do that. And then we also have the 128 versions of both the Swiss draft and the... I think there was going to be sealed. I don't know, actually. They might not have gotten sealed off. They were going to do the 128 sealeds. Oh, well. Anyway, and then there's a draft. Now, the draft is actually really unique, and I've never done it before. And what it is I take my 3 packs of cards. I sit down with 7 other people. I open 1 pack in front of everybody, but they don't get to see my cards. And I look at my cards, and I'm like, oh, okay. So now a pack has 1 rare, 3 uncommons, and the rest are commons. Rarity defines how often you're going to find that card in a pack, or in a set. So obviously the common cards you'll find all the time. Uncommon cards, a little bit harder to get. Rare cards are much more difficult. And then the 1 card that is rare could also instead be legendary, which is even harder to get. Because there's only like, I think 26 legendaries in the set of 350. So there's only a small group of legendaries. Rarity does not necessarily determine the value of a card. It's harder to get, so it can have a lower supply, thus a higher demand, but the card's qualities can vary. And one of the things that I've been learning is that there's a huge difference in what's a good card in a competitive, in a constructed environment, what's a good card in a draft environment. Cards that I would never, ever, ever put in my constructed deck immediately have value in a draft because of the limit of cards and synergies that you can create, because you have such a small, you're only getting 45 cards by the end of this. You have 3 packs, 15 each, 45 cards. So you take this pack out, and you look, and you're like, okay, which card am I going to use? Well, you don't necessarily take the rare. You just take the card that you want, whatever card you think is going to be best, and you pull it out, and that one's yours. And you put it down. And then you shuffle it, and you hand it off. You don't even have to, because it's digital, so it's not like anyone can see it. But you hand it off to the person to your left, and the person to your right hands you a pack. Now, it's missing a card. So then you pick another card. And you just keep going until all 15 cards are gone. Then we open up another pack, and we go the other way. And we just keep going until we have 45 cards. And the goal is to create a deck that you can have 40 cards, including the shards. So you about 22, 24 real cards, and then shards. And then you play against other people in an attempt to win prizes with your small little deck. So of these types, they each have two sides to them: competitive versus Swiss. Swiss says that you get to play everybody, and you are more likely to win prizes, even though you did poorly. But you get to play every time. So it's based on the number of wins. So like you go 3 rounds in an 8-man Swiss, and if you win all 3 times, you get 3 packs. If you only win once, you get 1 pack. However many times you win, that's how many packs you get. In a competitive environment, like a competitive draft, if you lose, you're out. You single elimination. But if you win, your wins are usually worth more packs. So like a first win in a competitive gives you 2 packs. You can see that right there. And then a second place, you get 3 packs, so for 2 wins. So that's a little bit better than the Swiss, and then 5 packs ultimately is the goal. So these are the different kinds. Now, there are also, while we talk about like Swiss and competitive there's a kind of a choice on how to do drafts, which is like rare drafting versus normal drafting. Rare drafting is about taking the cards that are either harder to get and more valuable so that you can sell them, or for me, I rare drafted, and it was about taking the cards that I don't have for my collection. I'm a king backer, so I started with about 155 packs, which isn't a ton. I don't have a lot of resources. I was fortunate enough to be able to kickstart that hard, and I had to be careful about how I did it. And honestly, if I had to go back in time and start this all over, I would only ever draft. And the reason is that when you open a pack outside of the tournament, the value is only what the cards give you. But in order to play tournaments like sealed or draft, you have to have packs that are unopened. The advantage of going into a sealed is that you get to take your 6 packs and you get to open them right there. So not only do you get to open them and you get the value of the content, then you get to build a deck and try to beat other people so you can win more packs so you can continue to play. Obviously, for sealed, you have to have 6 booster packs, and then I think it's $2. And for competitive, draft. For draft, you have to have 3 boosters, and it's $1. So the thing about draft is that you actually get to pick your cards. Now, I will admit there are once in a while when I'll open a pack and I'll be like, oh, I really want all 5 of these cards, because it'll make a better deck, because I don't have all the cards that I want, whatever it happens to be. I'm fortunate enough, I've been playing long enough now that I have more than a full play set of every common and uncommon in set 1. So I'm very fortunate of that. Still struggling to get all the rares and the legendaries that are there, and I find that I want to have a full collection, so it's going to be a pain, but I'm doing the best that I can. So that's something you just have to consider when you do this. Now, me personally, I focus on the draft because that, I think, makes the best use of my packs. And when I run out of packs, or when we hit set 2 and I need to get set 2 packs, I will have to start playing constructed, or I will have to purchase my packs. And I would prefer to play constructed, so we will see if constructed fires more once the demand for new packs becomes more important. And I am sorry that I'm rambling a little. We are going to go into overtime. Damn it. Okay. That's not technically an expletive. I think I can use that. Okay, so that's not. All right. So okay, quick. All right. So we want to do. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to talk about Infamous Neo. That's the part that I. And there it is. I want to do a shout out about a guy who I believe he's from Australia. I should have checked that first. I'm pretty sure. So Infamous Neo, since I already spoiled it, Infamous Neo is this from what little I've seen of him, or from what I've seen of him, I've had no direct contact with him. He seems like a pretty cool guy. He's currently here in 2 days. Wow, it's late. In 2 days, we're actually going to be having this Child's Play charity thing. I don't know if he's actually literally going to do this, or because him and one other person is working on this, but 48-hour, full-on, non-stop live streaming, and just a bunch of different people are going to join in, and we're all going to be trying to donate. I'm going to try to donate. I think I'm going to try to donate $10. Finances are a little rough for me, so but I really believe in the. I mean, from what I've read, it's a really good cause. You won't see this video by the time it's happened, so there's no real point in talking about it. But hopefully you also donated. So Infamous Neo actually has, and I'm going to post his site at the bottom, but he has a YouTube and a Twitch. A YouTube site and a Twitch site, and basically he did this really cool series that's like how to draft. And since I've never drafted before, it's really kind of helpful. Like some of the concepts, like bread, are something that you use as sort of a basic premise when you're first starting out, even for constructed. So I understood a lot of what was going on there, but I've watched some of the episodes more than once, try to get me better. I'm not a great drafter. I'm just not a good drafter at all. And I'm getting better now that I have the commons and the uncommons, and I'm just focused on the rares. I'm getting better because I'm not as limited about what I'm picking. But even then, I make some poor choices. And then there's just like, sometimes people just get better decks than you do. Sometimes they're just better players than you are. So I'm not the greatest, so don't watch me draft and think, yeah, let's do that. No. Go check out Infamous Neo, and he has a whole series on it, from basic to more complicated concepts, including archetypes and whatnot, about how to draft. And once you get into this game and you want to learn how to draft, watch those videos, especially for you that don't have resources already put into this game. If you just got a beta key, go check this out, because you're thinking about drafting and it's going to cost you money, and you want to make sure that your money is efficient. So I recommend drafting. Get a few packs, draft, read his or watch his tutorials, and do the best that you can, because the more packs you win, the less you have to spend, less actual money that you have to spend to play the game. And that's kind of the thing, is that right now we're kind of in that PvP aspect, and TCGs, when it comes to PvP, we're pay to play. There might be circumvents to make it a little easier for people who either have lower amounts of money that they have or want to spend in this game, or just can't, or don't want to, whatever. But there's going to be a free-to-play aspect as well, and I'm sorry that I waited all the way to the end of the show to tell you about that. But the player versus environment aspect is actually free to play. You get one deck of your choice. There are 4 starter decks, 2 tone decks. You get one deck of your choice. You get to go through these starter trials that they made, which are really cool. Kind of gives you a little sort of a basic tutorial on what you're doing, and you get more cards, and that allows you to kind of tweak your deck a little bit. If you have friends in the game, they'll be trading. Picking up new cards for commons and uncommons isn't really that bad, and not that much of an expense on the auction house, which we do have an auction house. That's cool. Player trading, still waiting. So different things like that. So I was going to do a lore draft, and I'm already at 53 minutes. I'm going to do a lore draft. I'm going to try. In fact, I just missed it. Okay, I was going to think about doing a live lore draft. Yeah, and it's as late as it is right now, it's probably not going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, and then I'm going to restart it. I will either do an old video that I've already done and do an overlay. That might actually be easier for me, or I will try to actually do one live. All right, we're back. So we actually had a little bit of a catastrophe. I attempted to actually just do it right then, and I'm having a little bit of sound issues, which you noticed at the beginning, where it's creating this sort of echo. I think I figured out what's wrong and I've corrected it hopefully, but I did end up having to actually link this video to a video, so it's actually been a quite endeavor. You don't realize this, but it's been 3 hours since I ended the last video. Yeah, crazy, right? So, okay, so we're going to do the lore draft. Here it is. I'm just going to go ahead and get it started. And then what's going to happen is, like I said, a card comes out. It's going to be a rare or a legendary. Whatever the card is, we just talk about it or some aspect of it. See, there we go. So we have a Pack Raptor. So the Pack Raptor is a 1 cost, 1 threshold, green or wild card, Swift Strike. When this troop enters play, you create 4 Pack Raptors and you shuffle them into your deck. This troop gets +1/+1 for each other Pack Raptor you control. This is kind of the beginning of what a TCG, that's a digital TCG, can do. Yeah, in real life, you could have 4 in your sideboard and just sitting off to the side, and you could like shove them into your deck and shuffle it. But I mean, that gets really convoluted. This is just a tip of what this bad boy can do. I'm actually really fortunate because I was a Kickstarter. I have 2 AA versions of this card. AA stands for alternate art. I actually just realized this while doing this recording. But we're not going to talk about the Pack Raptor as much as I enjoy the card. We're going to talk about somebody who uses wild magic and is one of the dominant races. We're going to talk about the Shin'hare. Now, the Shin'hare are a feudalistic caste society. They use classes and rabbits. They're very small. They're only about like 4 or so feet tall, and they're not super strong. They're rabbits, but they use agility, and they're extremely cunning, and they're extremely vicious. And they love to do basically a couple of things. They like conquering, and they like oppressing. It's their big thing. It's what they do. And so they're constantly seeking out other races and attempting to enslave them. And that's kind of their goal, is that's just their thing. That's what they do. So they have a feudalistic society, and it's kind of got an ode to, I want to say, kind of an old shogun, kind of the Japanese shogun mixed with a little bit of some of the old eras of like China and whatnot, and just some of that style is present. So I don't know what the proper term for that. We don't really use Asian or Orient anymore, I guess. I'm not sure what term to use there, but think Japanese shogun and then mix a little bit of like Hinduism, Chinese, that all kind of feeds together. Plus, they're obviously their own overwhelming sense of creativity that created this race. So the Shin'hare, extremely vicious group of rabbits. A little out of sorts because I'm doing this for the second time. And basically, they don't care about individuality. That's not important to them. When you're born, you're already basically earmarked for what you're going to do, and you're usually going to be a peon, a peasant, a grunt, a shock troop, your cannon fodder. Your importance to society is irrelevant. Your worth, even to yourself, is irrelevant. You have no self-worth at all. So, in the case of any like sadistic, vicious, and hypocritical race like this, you have individuals who tend to stand out, and they rise above. So you have like Ear-Rune commanders, Bucktooth, Sensei to the Wounded Petal. These people rise above the shock troops. They manage to get above that, and they become important. And suddenly, an individual actually has worth. And that's what's really interesting about them, is that they kind of have that hypocrisy. Sexism is another thing. Like when you're female, you start out and you're just like everyone else. They don't care if you're male or female. They're just going to send you into battle. If you're lucky enough to survive and you're female and you happen to reach sexual maturity, oh, hey, there's my Bucktooth commander. This is a perfect example. He's a Shin'hare cleric. Other Shin'hare you control get +1/+1. This is a perfect example because if you have like battle hoppers in play, that are 0/1. They're basically useless. They're just cannon fodder, chump blockers. You throw him into play, and suddenly you have an actual army, and you can swarm your opponent with him. And that's why he is given more respect. And so people like him and the Runier commanders, all those kind of commanders, those warriors that have risen above the ranks, proved themselves to be of more value than just your run-of-the-mill cannon fodder, they are actually given bunnies, their own little harem, that are specifically just to give them pleasure. Okay, and that's kind of that sexism. You have, if you're female and you happen to manage to make it to sexual maturity, then you're forced to kind of become this this concubine, and you produce offspring as much as possible, and then but you're given more worth than cannon fodder, so you're still above, even though the life isn't necessarily especially tough to humans, to us, the way we see the world. Even though that life would be horrible, it's so much better than what it was. And then you have like you have these Runier commanders, and then suddenly you're kind of given to them. So again, you're lesser of lesser importance. But then if you're extremely fertile and you prove yourself, you become a member of like the concubines, and you're given more worth. And in fact, specific really potent warriors, both on the battlefield and off, because obviously the idea of if you're a really good warrior, then your children will be really good warriors. That idea of passing that trait on. So the strongest warriors are often studied out to some of the more fertile and more important bunnies. And so again, you can see there's your concubine. And so again, you kind of flip up and down. Is this sort of, it's almost like it's equal, but always never equal, I guess, which is kind of contradictory, I guess. So that's kind of what's really interesting about this society, because it's very different than us. It doesn't have to be like ours, and I like that. I dig that. And they're the bad guys. I mean, they make no attempt at trying to sound like they might even be good. I mean, all the underworld races are pretty much evil, and the only exception to that is potentially the necrotic. Potentially, because we don't really know what they're doing, and you could argue that they're like completely alien race, not from Entrath, and thus the way of looking at the world is completely foreign. But yeah, so that's hard to say. So they use wild magic. That's their big thing, is that Shin'har started by using wild magic, and they're creatures of the wild, and they're really good at it. And really, in a lot of ways, the Shin'har kind of represent that nature, because they're good at procreating, they're good at adapting, they're really good at, oh, there's your sensei. Sensei of the Wounded Petal, I talked about him earlier, I hope. Anyway, they're really good at adapting, evolving, and overcoming the odds. And so in that way, they're almost very representative of nature. They use their powers to further that cause, using things like being able to procreate even faster, like runts of the litter, the ritualist of the spring litter. They just increase their productivity, where they're just constantly being able to produce more and more kin. And then these kin are then, grow and make it to the battlefield. If they make it to the battlefield, and then they're on the battlefield, they probably don't even survive that encounter. So they use wild magic. They also do things like using wild magic to enhance themselves. If you look at the wild growth cohort, Shin'har are typically pretty small and not super strong creatures. But if you look at the wild growth, that's an example of a Shin'har using its wild magic, or someone's using wild magic on it, and Sultan! Sorry. And using wild magic on it to improve it, make it bigger. I mean, suddenly a battle hopper goes from being a 0/1 to a 3/4, and that's actually really impressive. So they use that wild magic to get. So their need for power is what actually led to their downfall. they discovered that the Coyote, the nomadic tribal race, just had the ability to control the weather, and they wanted so bad to understand it and know it that they started attacking the Coyote in the attempts to enslave their people. And the Coyote were very good at fighting back. They weren't going to be taken easily, so a big war broke out between the two of them. And being who the Shin'hare are, it didn't occur to them. They didn't. It was they're not satisfied with just that. They had to also continue their other endeavors, which included harassing the elves at the Farrowroot Forest. So this kind of put two enemies on two fronts, and long story short, the Shin'hare get forced underground. So now the Shin'hare are forced underground, but they thrive, they adapt, and they meet the Venin. And the Venin are actually who teach the Shin'hare their blood magic, and that blood magic is what they start using that blood magic, and it's perfect fit for them because it's all about violence, murder, sacrifice. Necessary sacrifice actually has a Shin'hare being sacrificed, so that's cool. And it creates this idea of the sort of yin-yang cohesive force of natural magic versus corrupted magic, and blending the two together. In fact, it's the two in conjunction that are used to keep Aito, the Shin'hare king, alive. Because Shin'hare typically only live about 40 years, and that's if they get to old age. But Aito's been around for about 150 years, and a huge part of that is because they're using blood magic. Because blood magic is very corrupting, it's causing him to have mutations, extra arms, getting bigger, things like that. So I'm actually really excited to get to see an Aito card. I expect him to occur maybe set 3 if we're lucky, maybe set 2. I don't know. And I expect him to be a legendary. So that will be really interesting to see if they produce that card and when. So that's kind of the Shin'hare. That's we've talked about the Shin'hare, the wild magic, and then they join the Venin, help them out, and then the Necrotic come to them and they're like, hey, we want you to help us join our underworld alliance, and we're going to raid the surface. This, of course, I mean, they're all about conquering and oppressing, so they're eager to jump into that, so that's a huge part of why they're going into that. And I believe, I talked about how I was going to, theorycraft a little bit of why the 4 dominant races are the 4 focal points of the races. There is the fact that Corey Jones loves the Shin'hare. He makes no bones about that, which is good. I like it. But if you think about it, the Shin'hare produce so many soldiers and have no care about their cannon fodder. It makes sense that of the 4 races, the one to mobilize the biggest army and the ones that they're willing to just flood numbers against their opponents would be the Shin'hare. So it makes sense that the Shin'hare is one of the 2 races that is leading the charge. Doesn't mean they're the most important race in it. I have a feeling that set 2 is going to produce a lot of interesting cards, but I might have mentioned it earlier, we're probably not going to see, they're talking about potentially a deep dive in set 3 for the Venin, and so it'll be really interesting to explore them, because they're kind of a very unique race, so I'm really interested to see what they do with that. Okay, so that's my lore draft. Real quick, I want to just go and do this, do a wrap-up about what all we did. So next week, I want to be able to do this. I'm going to try to keep this to an hour. I'm sorry this went over. I want to try to do this every week, but I'm not making any promises. This is something very new to me, producing content, and it's very difficult to set aside the time. This personally has already taken several hours off of just tonight of getting this done, and I apologize that it's roughshod, but hopefully each successive episode will get better. And I'm looking into improving the show with some animations at the beginning maybe. So we'll see how well I learn how to do this sort of stuff, because this is all kind of new to me. But the most important thing, please, consider coming back next episode. I want to talk about, I want to keep going. I want to talk about orcs. I want to talk about blood magic. I want to not only just do another lore draft, but I also want to do creative decks, finding things. One of the things that I found is I started with alpha, and then I kind of came away from it because I had some things to do. Life kind of pulled me away, and then I heard about a tournament, and I'll talk about that later, maybe next episode. But that brought me back. One of the things about alpha is that you had all the cards, and so you would miss cards all the time. One of the things I love about drafting is that you get such a small group of cards, you get to see interactions you might not have thought of before. So we'll discover some different things. I'm not sure exactly which deck I'm going to look into, but we'll do some creative decking and I'll just show you some different concepts, what you might do, give you some ideas that you can improve upon on your own. But the big thing, criticism, constructive criticism, please, please, please. I'm really appreciative that you made it all the way to the end of the show, and impressed rather, considering how rough it is. But, tell me what you like about the show. Tell me what you don't like about the show. Things that I can improve upon. Things that maybe need to cut away. Things that I should focus on. I really, the big thing is that I've got to find a way to produce content that matters to me. So I'm kind of really into lore and the creative deck building, and I do a lot of drafting. Because if I'm not doing what I want to do, then I'll be bored and I won't be fun to watch. If you don't enjoy what I'm doing, then you're not going to watch. So we kind of have to try to find that balance. So if you're interested in becoming a part of my audience and you want to see this show progress, give me some advice. What you think I could do to improve the show, and I will certainly try to make this better. I will try to make this weekly. Again, all the links are going to be below. That should go to everything. I may even put a couple more links on. I don't know. So check that out. I will see you next time on Eye of the Storm.